And I think when you start to have the conversation on culture and multiculturalism, it just, I think for me it starts to slip through my fingers. Because then I get lost. I get lost when I start to look at these categories or subsets. I get lost when it feels like we're reducing people down to things that qualify them and sort of earmark identity. And so at our field forum, David Cronick did a really good job of giving a devotion on this. And it was profound. And what he did for us was he brought it back to the scriptures. He brought it back to the Hebrew Bible. And he said, when we have this conversation on multiculturalism, how do we ground it? Where do we start from it? What are our assumptions, and how are those assumptions sort of fleshed out in how we view faith today? And he said that mistakenly, we often start in Genesis 11, right? The Tower of Babel. That the people sort of came together. They wanted to be like God. They wanted to sort of reach this place of the heavens. And so God sort of cursed them. He confused their language, and he created sort of these cultures. And I think a lot of people, probably not us here, start with Babel when we start the conversation on multiculturalism. And I think that's a mistake, because that implies that culture, or the confusing of cultures, is the result of a curse. But if you look at the page before that, Genesis chapter 10, there's the table of nations, right? The descendants of Noah, and sort of what this table of nations does, I think, is in predating Babel, is it affirms that the differences, that the languages, that the cultures, in fact, are a result of the promise to be fruitful. And it's actually a gift. And it's not until the people try to become like God that the confusing of their language becomes a curse, but it's in their differences. This is validation of obedience, right? This is the sign of the promise. And David said, Babel results in the curse when the nations come together and attempt to be like God. That deletes the promise of fruitfulness. He took it then into Acts 2, and he said at Pentecost, Babel is reversed, right? When the Spirit of God comes and all these folks start praying and speaking, prophesying in their own language, but everybody sort of hears the same thing. David says that everybody hears the word of God in their own language, and unity is not uniformity or assimilation. In Pentecost, right, when God reverses Babel, he doesn't give everybody the same language. He doesn't sort of create a uniform sense of culture or sort of identity, but validates the differences in our culture and our cultural identities. And that's the miracle. And I think that's what happens when the Spirit comes, right? It reverses this curse of Babel. And so I think, for me, like grappling with the terms and finding common language gets overwhelming. It's discouraging. It's frustrating. But I also think it's part of it. I think we have to know what we mean. Because I think if we don't know what we mean, we're not having the same conversation. But like I said, David does that well by helping not convolute what we understand to be the curse in this, but the blessing, and then the recovery. That uniformity doesn't mean unity, right? And I think there's something great in that.